cut out the bullshit. There's a professor in Japan. He was a professor in pottery. And he had a class and he split it up into 2 groups. One group, he had them make the perfect pot. The second group, their assignment was to make as many pots as they could. So you have one group that's just ripping through pots. They made 500 pots over the course of the semester. The original group was creating the perfect pot. At the end of the year, they reviewed all the pots and they selected the ones that looked the best. All of the ones that looked the best were from the group that failed 499 times, but they had that one amazing pot. I prioritize speed and reps above everything else. So I will fail 10 times and succeed 5 times before the next person who's overthinking it has even attempted it once. Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, I got a special guest. I got someone who is making waves and making moves in the boutique hotel space. He started off in the short-term rental space and quickly bought a 24-room hotel and is making moves. He's a good friend of mine. I got my man Gideon Spencer. Gideon, welcome to the show for the second time. What's up, baby?
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, dude. It's been a little bit, man. You've been traveling for 4 months. You've been all over Europe, I feel like, and all over the world. How was the trip, man? Where was the highlight of your 4 months traveling?
Oh, the highlight of the trip. So to do research, of course, we were hopping around various resorts, and there was a really killer one called Natia in northern Italy, where it was a boutique hotel on 10 acres, and they grew wine and vegetables, and they had a Michelin star restaurant inside on the first floor. So getting to relax and indulge there was probably the highlight. But I will say 4 months out of the game is a little too long. I was working remote, but it's good to be back in the grind, hanging out and moving forward.
Where you said it's called Nadia?
Natia,
In Italy.
Nitiia in
Okay.
Italy.
I'm gonna look it up right now on my phone. I love Italy. I've only been to Rome, Venice, and what's the one in the middle? In between both of those, Florence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So I want to go back. I want to do like Amalfi Coast, and so maybe I got to stop by Nadia right now. How do you
So
spell it? I'm gonna look it up on the map.
Natiia. And that one is, so it's on Lake Garda. It's kind of a hidden gem in Italy. So it's less talked about than some of the other more popular areas. And it's not as popular in terms of like how much publicity and big it gets, but it's kind of like a hidden gem, a little secret. So over there, they have full service. They have a Michelin star restaurant inside. They have a pool, an infinity pool that overlooks the lake. They have a vineyard right next door where they grow wine, and you can buy the wine and drink it there. You can hang out, have picnics in the vineyard. They have local produce where they bring everybody from the community and from their local gardens there. It's wild, man. You go outside and you see the chefs picking herbs from the garden that they're going to present for dinner that night. It's absolute class. It's amazing.
I can't wait to go back. I think if you're listening to this and you're thinking about going to Europe, Italy is great. The food and the wine is probably my favorite part, and every city has so much culture. I'm doing a 2-week trip this winter.
Nice.
Because as you guys know, everything kind of shuts down in the commercial real estate space. Brokers are out of the office, lenders are out of the office, so there's not a whole lot of work to do. So we always take 2 weeks out of the office, kind of a nice little way to end the year. But I would go to Italy. However, we want to go somewhere warm. So we're going down to Australia. But maybe next summer, man. I'll have to check it out, and definitely have to circle back for some tips and recommendations. But I feel you, man. Like traveling for a while, it's nice to get back, I'm sure, for you, and just get back in the grind. There's nothing like being in the trenches, building the thing.
Yeah, 1 to 2 weeks is max for me. Like even 2 weeks might be a little far. I start getting antsy after 1
Yeah.
week. But yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah. So anyways, man, so you were in the short-term rental space, and then you dove into the boutique hotel space. You moved quick. You bought a 24-room boutique hotel up in Solvang, California's Central Coast. Talk about that deal, and how's that deal going?
So the deal's going really well. And just to give a quick recap, so bought a fourplex, converted all of the units into short-term rentals, got the property stabilized, the numbers made sense, everything was perfect. So I wanted to scale up. So within that year, committed to buying a hotel. And looking back, I could have jumped straight into the hotel. And so for anybody listening, if you have short-term rentals and you think, oh, I need to just one more or a few more to actually bump up into commercial, you don't. It's a lie. You can just dive right in, talk to somebody who you know who's in the space, build rapport with them. So that's what I did. So decided to buy a hotel, joined a community with a high concentration of individuals who were buying hotels, getting familiar with it, walked into rooms where people's reality was my dream so that my dream became normalized. And yeah, cut out all the bullshit. We ended up buying the hotel. So it's Solvang, 24 units. It's in Central California wine country, one of the coolest little towns, Solvang. It's a little Danish town. So there's a lot of foot traffic from LA and Santa Barbara. Looking back at the data, it was very recession resistant, which is why we liked it. So we're managing that risk that way. And we're starting renovations in January, wrapping up in March, and we're going to do the relaunch. So super stoked.
Yeah, I love what you said. You said get in rooms where your dreams are others' realities. It's the quickest way to improve your life. It's the quickest way to shortcut your path from point A to point B. This game is all about being in the right rooms. But that said, I love that you did one thing, and this is something that I've done along my 5-6 years of investing in real estate entrepreneurship. Is you took action, and obviously you're not going to account for everything that pops up. There's going to be mistakes that are made along the way. Shoot, we're making dozens of mistakes every single week. That's just part of the game. But we learn from them and we get better from them. And you compound those decisions that you make over months and over years. And you look back 6 months later, you look back 18 months later, and you see the growth. But I love that you take action, and you guys jumped into that deal, partnered with a couple folks. Talk real quick. When you're partnering with folks in the hotel space, or maybe you're going to go buy any commercial real estate asset, what are kind of the 3 steps to get into a commercial real estate deal?
So the 3 steps to jump right in, and this is for somebody whether you're familiar with commercial real estate or real estate in general or not, is step number 1, find somebody who's done it before, whether it's commercial or anything else. Find someone who's done it before. Step 2 is build rapport with them to deeply understand what types of deals they're looking for. What's their search criteria? What kind of markets are they looking in? And step number 3, go find assets in that market that fit their criteria so that once you lock that asset down, you can align incentives with that expert and bring them on your team. So that's what we did. So my partners and I have 2 other partners who are getting into the space. We got deeply in touch with other experts in the space, deeply understood their buy box and the markets that they were looking in. So when we went out and started looking for deals in those markets and finally secured one, we were able to reach out to those experts and say, "Hey, look, we have an asset that fits that fits what you're looking for. Are you interested in coming in on the deal?" We ended up bringing them in the deal, and it ended up making raising capital significantly easier, getting lending significantly easier. We have an expert on the team to cut out all the bullshit because 95% of the effort in anything you do for the first time is just figuring out what to actually do.
Mm.
Only 10% is what moves the needle. So if you can bring experts on and you surround yourself with people who have done it before, you can cut out 90% of the bullshit, only focus on the 10% that moves the needle, and drive things forward 10 times faster.
Dude, that's so good, man. Because in all reality, I think it's every aspect of life. There's a lot of information to be learned, but only 10% of it is actually relevant. I mean, think about, going to get your real estate license as an agent. Those real estate exams, I've never like really took it, but I hear from agents, I have friends that are agents and they're like, yeah, like none of this stuff is really relevant. It's all about relationships, shaking hands, and putting yourself out there. The more people you know, the more money you're going to make. And so, same thing with the hotel space, same thing with buying a piece of commercial real estate. It's like, yes, you got to know the lingo. There's a lot of things that matter. And there's a lot of different levers that you can pull. And you got to know how to, like, pull all those levers and what they do to affect the deal, impact the return profile. And you got to be able to know how to analyze risk. But at different stages of the process, only certain things matter. And so instead of focusing on all the things that, might go into a deal from like the whole cycle of a deal that might be a 10-year window, it's important just to focus on the most important next step. And often the most important next step can be something relatively simple.
100%. And so often we lie to ourselves by telling ourselves that we have more things to do before actually doing the thing that freaks us out. And it's all a facade. It's all us trying to live in this bubble that makes us feel good and safe and secure. And having that expert that can identify the bullshit tasks that we might be setting ourselves up with that are slowing us down is huge. Like on one of my free coaching calls, I had somebody who they want to launch a podcast and they've recorded 5 or 6 episodes already, but they're scared to release it because they say like, "Oh, well, I need to, have more recordings and I need to set up all these like systems and I need to set up notifications for the guests." And I was like, no, you don't. You hop on a call, record it on Zoom, and push it out. Like, it's literally those few steps. Everything else is BS. And you just need to get those reps in, because the reps and actually getting better at talking to people and hosting podcasts, that's what's actually going to build your brand and build retention. Having these automated emails that notify guests and give them, 3-day heads up and capture their info, that's not what's going to move the needle on your podcast.
Yeah, and those are things that you can add at any point. It's like the whole idea of like waiting for the perfect plan to start the race, waiting for the perfect plan to take action. In all reality, like the conditions are never going to be perfect, and you just got to start the thing. You got to launch the thing, whether it's a podcast, you decided to put out content, social media perspective, like you just got to get rolling. In all reality, like you're not going to be perfect day one, and it's okay because not a lot of people are going to listen, they're not going to watch on day one. But the sooner you can get started, the sooner you're going to get a lot of at bats and a lot of reps under your belt, and the sooner you're going to get better at this game, which is important. And I love that you took action. Jumping in the real estate game. You have a corporate background. What were you doing prior to jumping in the fourplex and all that stuff?
So prior to that, I was in the tech scene. So I was building tech startups and working with tech startups to scale their products. And so it was great getting to transfer a lot of that knowledge and experience into commercial real estate, because that's what helped me rip 10 times faster than a lot of the other people that I was seeing. So perfect example was, we bought the fourplex and we were renovating each unit slightly differently. So the first unit we renovated, and I did a lot of the work myself to get familiar with what it would look like, just so that when I hired a contractor, I'd be less likely to get ripped off. The second unit, we ended up hiring out subcontractors so that they were coming in doing the work. The third unit, we hired a GC to manage and oversee all of it. And then we ended up doing that for the fourth unit as well. So basically, within that short window of that fourplex, I concentrated as much learning as possible and was just focused on, okay, what does it look like to get familiar with the renovations, to hire subcontractors, and to have a GC manage all of it. So really stacking up those lessons and focusing more on the lessons than the actual return profile set me up to confidently go into the commercial real estate space and say, all right, I understand how this game is played from a high level. Now I want to bring an expert in to understand the nuances of what it looks like to close a larger scale deal.
In something that you're doing, and you're still doing the tech career right now, which I love, is like you don't have to quit and go all in. And in the beginning, you can do both until you reach a certain point to where you're like, okay, now I'm gonna go all in, and you've been doing both. And so I like that you're doing that, because a lot of people, I hear them say it all the time, like, I don't have the time. I got a family, I got a full time career. I'm like, no. When I was doing both, I was working 6-day work weeks as a full time air traffic controller. I was working nights, weekends, holidays. I had a social life. I was doing both for a while, and yeah, it's a lot of work. But if you really want something bad enough, you got to sacrifice certain things. And so one of those things that I sacrificed was I stopped watching TV. I stopped watching movies. I stopped watching anything, or I stopped doing any activities that didn't serve me, make me money, or build to my future. And so, for anyone out there that says, hey, they don't have the time, like you're debunking that right now, because you're still working the day job and you're doing all this. Talk about time management and what that's kind of been like.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, there is a version of you who made the right sacrifices to get the things that you want. And it's up to you as to whether or not you become that version of you. So for me, I don't want to get to the end of my life wondering if I could have done more. I want to get to the end of my life thinking, man, I really laid it out all out on the table. I really went for the things I was interested in, and I don't regret anything because I gave everything that I wanted to go for a full send. So what that looks like for me is burning the midnight oil, spending the extra time, educating myself, talking to people, pushing forward on deals, cutting out the bullshit like we were talking about, cut out that 90% that doesn't serve me so I can stack up as many 10% with whatever I'm doing on top of each other and move 10 times faster than anybody else. So for me, what that time management looks like is blocking off and structuring my day. So I break my day up into 3 4-hour chunks. So the first 4 hours is for content and boutique hotels. The second 4 hours is for tech on the side. And then the third set of 4 hours is whatever miscellaneous or high priority items are in there. And then, of course, after that, it's less structured. So it's either winding down, or if it's crunch time, piling on even more work. But that's how I work my time. And I understand not everybody has those freedoms, right? Like some people, they have a 9 to 5 that they have to show up for and they can't allocate any other time to that. But I mean, we all like you find time for the things that you're interested in. If you're watching Netflix, if you're scrolling on Instagram, if you're doing any of those non-productive items, those should be on the chopping block to cut out entirely. And if it doesn't serve that version of you that can actually get you where you need to go, then you need to starve that item and cut it out of your life and go extreme. Otherwise, you're going to get to the end of your life wondering what could have been, but it'll be too late.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think, for us right now, as we kind of wind down to the end of the year, we got 2.5 weeks left in the year here in 2024. And then before we know it, it's gonna be 2025. I like to do a lot of reflecting this time of year. And so I think it's good for everyone. Listen to this right now. I'm doing it right now as we kind of wind down. I'm getting clear on what I did right this year, what I did wrong, getting clear on all the activities that I'm currently doing. And this game is about doing more of what's currently working, doing more of what's serving you, doing more of what's making you money. And you continue to do more of it until a bottleneck arises. And then you take your energy to go remove that bottleneck, and then you go back to doing more of what's working. And so, I don't care where you're listening to this podcast right now. We all have activities that we're doing that we don't even realize that are not serving us, that are not making us money. They're not building our future, and they don't make us happy. And if that's the case, you got to cross those things off our list. So something that I do every now and then when life gets a little bit overwhelming is I write down all the activities that are currently consuming my time, and I will go down that list. And if something's not serving me, it doesn't make me happy, it's not making me money or building my brand or my future, then I will cross it off the list. And it helps you reframe, it helps you realign and refocus. And that's what this game is all about.
Yeah, and then even then, like, you made massive sacrifices to get into commercial real estate. So, I mean, share some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was working 6-day work weeks, and for a 9-month period, like literally, I just became obsessed. I was like reading books, listening to podcasts. I stopped going out. I started going to real estate networking events before I even owned any real estate, and I just started getting around the right people, around the right rooms, and I stopped going out. I sacrificed my social life, and I stopped hanging out with people that weren't aligned with this new version of myself. And yeah, for like a 9-month period, that's all I did. I just became obsessed. I just knew it was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And I made it happen. And yes, it was scary along the way. Like I cashed out my 401k. My first handful of deals were out of state. And a lot of people told me it was too risky. A lot of people told me not to cash out my 401k. A lot of people told me not to go invest out of state. But I'm just lucky that I didn't listen to a lot of that noise. I stayed focused. I listened to the folks that were actually buying real estate, the people that were in places that I wanted to be. And I took their advice. I didn't take advice from family members. I didn't take advice from coworkers that had never done what I was looking to do. And so I think if you're listening to this right now and you have family members, you have coworkers, you have people in your personal circle that you grew up with that don't own real estate, they've never owned a business before, and they're giving you advice on what to do and what not to do, you thank them for their thank them for their advice, but take it with a grain of salt. And you need to get in rooms and start listening to people that are actually in places where you want to be. Get in rooms where people actually own real estate, people that are taking action, people that have made mistakes in a space. You can learn what to do, but also what not to do. So that's the biggest key. But looking back, dude, I'm so glad that the number one key to success is taking action. That
100%.
is it. That's all it comes down to. And putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, putting yourself in situations where the hard work has to get done, putting yourself in situations where the hard way is the only way. Like that's the key. Like over and over and over, the reps, the at bats, like whether it's podcasting, whether it's social media, whether it's buying real estate, looking at deals, like just continue to do it over and over and over. Even if you don't feel like doing it, like you got to keep doing it, got to keep doing it. And then that's what creates greatness.
And becoming obsessed. Like you shut everything that wasn't serving you off for 9 months. I did the same thing. I went through a 6-month period where I literally the first 3 months I ripped through 12 books on real estate. I was training for an ultra marathon, and every morning I'd lace up, go for a long run listening to an audiobook. When I'd get home, I'd open up a book and start reading, at least dedicating an hour a day to reading books and educating myself. I was listening to real estate books while I was renovating and learning and actually improving the property myself. So like literally every sliver of time I had my AirPods, and my friends make fun of me because literally if I have like a 2-minute walk into a building, I'll pop in my AirPods and push play on something literally just to stay fully saturated in that mindset, letting it become something I'm obsessed about, falling asleep thinking about real estate, waking up thinking about real estate. Because if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking like, oh, I guess I could, yeah, I could add another like 15 minutes to read. It's like, go extreme, rip the Band-Aid off, Let all your friends know, hey, you're not going to see me for another 6 months. Hunker down and just rip. Let it go and talk to people who have actually done it before. And you'll see in a 6 month period, I'm talking to you, you'll see in a 6 month period, your life change, do a full 180 to actually get to where you're trying to go. And that's the only way.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And speaking of hunkering down, it's like it's about the focus, it's about the grind, saying no to all the things that don't serve you. Starting is about saying yes, growing is about saying no. And this doesn't need to be forever, but like you need to do it for a period of time. And one of the best hacks that no one talks about, in addition to everything you mentioned, one of the best hacks is cutting out alcohol and waking up early. Like I say, 99.9% of problems can be solved by eliminating alcohol and waking up at 5:30 in the morning.
Completely agree.
And you've done this, right? I've done stretches to where I eliminate the alcohol. Today's actually day 100, not drinking. And a lot of growth happens. Thank you, Oscar. A lot of growth happens in those windows. And, you know, if you're someone that enjoys, I think it's important to have balance. And so if you're someone that's like, hey, like, you know, I'm going to drink a little bit here and there, then do it. But you should go in seasons or go through seasons to where you don't drink for 75 days, 100 days. I did 2 seasons this year and changed my life. It really changed my life. Like looking back at these last 100 days, I can't name anything negative that happened to me. It was only wins, right? And if you really want it bad enough and you want to, you know, you feel stuck, you're looking for that opportunity, you're looking for that next thing, and you're like, hey, I'm ready to level up. Well, then it starts with that. Like that's one of the biggest life hacks. Like you just said, hunker down 2 months, 3 months, 100 days, say no to all these other opportunities that don't serve you. Stop drinking, wake up early, work on your fitness, work on the business, work on finding real estate deals, educate yourself, get around the right players. And I promise you, if you're listening to this right now, like so much will change in those 100 days. Like things will start happening that you never thought was possible.
Totally. And respect yourself enough to follow through on it,
Mm.
right? Like make a commitment to yourself and respect yourself enough to follow through on it. If you're showing up every day for your day job and you're showing up for other people, but not showing up for yourself, that's a self-respect issue. And that's an area that you need to focus on and hunker down on.
Ooh, that's good.
Because if you love yourself and you respect yourself enough to follow through on things, it'll build self-esteem, it'll build self-confidence, and that'll fuel you even further. So it's a force multiplier for acceleration.
It is 100%. I love that you said, you know, if you're showing up for your employer, but you're not showing up for yourself, then like this game might not be for you. Like think about it. Like we will hustle so hard to make sure the other people get taken care of. Like our bills get paid. But then when it comes time to like taking care of ourselves, a lot of us just like sit back and be like, yeah, like, you know, I'm gonna take it easy and cruise for a little bit because all my bills are paid. Well, it's like, well, what about taking care of yourself? Life is short, right? And so I don't know. I always say months is the best way to measure how much time we have left. I'm 39 years old, and average life expectancy is 77 years old in America for a male. I have about 450 months left on this planet. So when I think about decision making, I think about taking risk. I think about how I'm spending my time. Time is the only form of currency that we have that we can't replace. It's the only form of currency that we don't know exactly how much is left in the bank. And so why would I not be selective with how I'm spending my time, or at least at a minimum go through seasons where I'm selective with how I'm spending my time? Why wouldn't I? We don't know how much is left.
Yeah.
We can all die tomorrow. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, completely agree.
So anyhow, you know, I'm curious for you, bro. So you're really good at analyzing boutique hotels. You're really good at analyzing commercial real estate. A lot of the folks in the hotel mastermind look at you as the thought leader. You're leading calls on underwriting. What is the key to finding a good deal? Like what makes a good deal in your estimation in the hotel space?
The key to finding a good deal is knowing when to have precision and when to have speed. A lot of the people who are underwriting deals or analyzing things, they tend to be heavy left brain thinkers. They're great with numbers, they're great with precision, and then they tend to lack in speed. I think really moving quickly in this game is about understanding when to be precise and when to have speed. If you're underwriting a deal that you are really close to signing the PSA on, or if you've already signed the PSA and you're in due diligence, precision is really important because you need to be a good steward of your investors' capital and make sure that it really is a rock solid deal. That said, there are tons of areas where speed is the important thing and precision is less important. Perfect example is LOIs. So when I was looking for deals, I was ripping out LOIs.
And what is the LOI for anyone listening?
So an LOI is a letter of intent. It's what you send to a seller or a broker representing the seller that basically says, hey, I have an intention to purchase this property for this price under these terms. It's a simple one pager. It should be more of a conversation starter than anything else. I was ripping out an average of 3 a day. A lot of the people that I talk to who are getting into this space, they're ripping out maybe one every couple weeks. So naturally, if they're ripping out 2 a month and I'm ripping out, what is that,
3 a
90 a
day.
month,
Yeah.
then like I have a 90 times higher chance of actually closing on a deal 90 times faster than that other person. And this game is all about speed. If there's a good deal on the table, it's not going to last very long. You have to get in there and move quickly. So what I was doing is I was submitting LOIs as a conversation starter. A lot of people, they overanalyze a deal. They want to make sure the LOI is perfect. No, I was just saying, hey, look, this is a deal that I'm interested in. Let's talk about it. So I was using it as a conversation starter. What I would do is I would find a good deal, and then if I was interested in presenting it to the broker, before I'd even met the broker, I would send them the LOI and I'd say, hey, this is the LOI based on some data that I pulled from CoStar. So I'd love to hop on a call to flesh out the details to get closer to the number that you think it is. So that does a couple things. One is it gets the conversation kicked off super quickly. Two, I'm giving the broker something valuable. LOIs are valuable to brokers because they can take that to the seller and show that they're actually doing their job. Three, it shows that I'm serious because I'm not just asking questions about the deal. I'm actually saying, hey, look, I have potential to commit to this thing. And four, it puts me on the same side as the broker. So rather than telling the broker, this is what I think the property is worth, I was telling the broker, hey, this is the number I came up with based on the information I can find, but I'd love more information from you to fill in the gaps. So when I would send an LOI that was below asking, I wasn't saying I think the property's worth less. I was saying, hey, I don't have the complete data, and I'd love for you and me to team up to figure out what this property is actually worth. And I noticed it catalyzed conversations much quicker. It jump started me. So while other people are going crazy, analyzing the deal and seeing what the right LOI is, I've already had 3 calls with the broker and we're about to sign the PSA and really figuring out if this thing works. So I have that deal locked up before the next person even has the LOI sent.
Yeah, and I love that you take the strategy. The LOI is a risk-free proposition. It's not legally binding, and to your point, it will spark the broker's attention for sure. Because brokers want to know: are you real? Can you get a deal to the finish line? Are they going to get paid? Because let's face it, the broker only gets paid if a deal gets to the finish line, and so I think that you got 20 seconds when you pick up the phone, maybe 10 seconds when you pick up the phone and talk to a broker for the first time to gain their trust. If you fumble over your words, if you sound like you're new, if you don't know how to spit the lingo, you don't know your search criteria, you're kind of beating around the bush, then they're not going to take you seriously. And so I think the first conversation is so important. So I think, when you pick up the phone, it's like, hey, my name's so-and-so. We buy boutique hotels. This is exactly what we're looking for. Do you happen to have any deals that might fit our criteria? Would love to chat. Like just that simple line right there, it shows a couple things. One, we buy boutique hotels. Great. So now he knows, okay, that's what we do. This is not my first time doing it. Number two, it also says we have a search criteria identified because we have a buy box. And three, I'm asking him really quickly. I'm summarizing exactly what the intention of the call is. I hate when people call. I get phone calls all the time. I don't answer most of these phone calls that I don't recognize the number, but so many people beat around the bush. And I'm like, dude, like on that call, tell them who you are and like in 5 seconds, what you're looking for. So we don't waste anyone's time and there's like a correct expectation. So I think when you pick up the phone with the broker, like tell them what you're looking for. I'm interested in buying boutique hotels. We do this. This is not our first time. We have a select buy box. Do you happen to have a couple minutes to chat to go over any opportunities that you might have? That's it.
Yeah, and don't overthink it. It's like if you see a cute girl, right? You walk up and you say, "Hey," first. You don't walk up and ask them out on a date.
No.
Like an LOI, a lot of people they treat it like you're asking them out on a date. You make it this big thing, but it's not. It's just a conversation starter. It's just saying hi. So just have the conversation, don't overthink it, and get the reps in. If your conversations fail the first few times, you're going to learn faster than if you overthink it trying to nail it every time.
That's so good. That's so good. If you love real estate investing, passive income, and tax benefits, but don't have the time, my company, Summers Capital, is buying boutique hotels right now. We source the deals, we renovate the properties, and we even handle all the day-to-day management, making it truly hands-off for our investors. If you want to learn more to see if we can help you, visit summerscapital.com/invest to book a call with our team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show. So from a high level though, obviously talking to brokers, that's one thing. Now, what buy box and search criteria, like what makes a good deal?
So what I look for is 10 to 50 units that are a tired asset. So an asset that I can add value to in terms of renovations as well as add operational improvements. So there we are going into one of the biggest transfers of wealth in our lifetimes. There are 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. They own 25% of small businesses, boutique hotels included. And so a lot of these mom and pops, they run boutique hotels like they've been running them for the last 20 to 30 years. With a lot of these improvements and operational improvements we can add, we can immediately add value to the asset. One perfect example is a lot of these assets we look at, they allocate one of the units to a managerial suite. So they have a manager that lives on site, that runs a front desk, etc. And what we do is, since we operate with a staff light model, we like adding operational value to an asset like that, where we can pull the manager out, convert that unit into an operational unit, and then now we've instantly added 10 to 15% to our top line revenue. So we like those operational, the properties that we can add operational value to. In terms of markets, we like properties that are in highly regulated markets. So typically in blue states that already have short-term rental regulations in place, that keeps competition out, which helps sustain the revenue for that property. And then I also like properties that are in markets that are secondary markets to major metros. So where we bought our asset was in Solvang, California. So it's about an hour and a half outside of LA and 45 minutes outside of Santa Barbara. And what we find is in strong regional travel markets is that that market tends to do well despite economic downturns and uncertainties. So what we find is that when we're under an economic downturn, people don't stop traveling. They just change their travel habits. So rather than flying to Europe for the week, they'll drive down to the Central California wine country and enjoy a weekend, right? Like, people still need to get out and do things. And so what we do is, when we find an asset in a good market, we'll look at that market over the past 30 years and make sure that it has strong fundamentals over those 30 years. So I'm looking for the average daily rate and the occupancy. Is that consistently increasing over those 30 years? And more specifically, how did it do in 2008 when there was that economic recession, right? So I'm trying to see, how can I manage my risk with the market? And then additionally, finding a market that buyers are interested in and lenders are interested in. This will make it easier to get financing initially. The refi will be easier and the exit will be easier, because those are the capital events that are the most important to really get those big returns. So I want to make sure, if an asset is hard to buy, that means it's easy to sell, and I want an asset that other people are going to love.
Yeah. Grant Cardone said this on a podcast that I think it was either this one or my old podcast back in the day. But he said, the easier it is to buy, the harder it is to sell. The harder it is to buy, the easier it is to sell. I mean, and that really makes a lot of sense, right? So when we go buy assets, we like to be in great locations, areas where deals don't sit on the market. There's not a lot of deals that trade. There's not any deals that sit on the market for, I mean, some of the deals in some of the markets that we're in, like, they don't even hit the market. And so it makes sense, right? Because if you buy a competitive deal that everyone wants to buy, the second you close on it, the next day you have all these other buyers that are willing to buy your property already. Think about that, you know? And so now you add value, you let time do its thing, you let inflation do its thing. And oh, by the way, the government has printed 80% of the money supply in the last 4 years. That is not going to stop anytime soon. There's going to continue to be inflation. The government's going to continue to print money. And so for buying in good locations, these things are going to go up over time. And then because you bought a competitive deal, it's going to be a lot easier at the exit. It's going to make the refi event a lot easier. It takes a lot of pressure off of these assets to perform, which is what I like. But also, you know, I think for me, man, buying in good deals, dude, like buying in good locations, buying good deals, it makes it easier to sit on these deals, right? Because they're going to go up in value quicker than some of these slower growth markets. When I first got into real estate investing, I was like in Cincinnati, and I bought a couple of apartment deals out there. I sold one of them this year, and the other one I still own. It got me in the game. you know, a little bit cash flow, but it's like, I'm not after cash flow. I'm after appreciation. And a little bit of cash flow is great, but cash flow doesn't build true wealth. The appreciation, the tax advantages, utilizing leverage, utilizing debt to multiply up and to trade up, increases the velocity of money. That's how you build true wealth.
100%. And that's a mistake that we see a lot of newer investors make is when they're looking for deals and they have a harder time competing with the more desirable deals, they'll be drawn to the deals that are in the middle of nowhere that like the cash on cash return seems pretty good and they'll bring the deals to me and I'll look at it and say the cash on cash looks all right, but there's no appreciation and nobody's going to want this deal. Nobody wants this deal now. So why are you giving this deal attention? Like, it's not like once you buy the asset, all of a sudden it's gonna like, since you wanted it, now other people are gonna want it too. So you have to be disciplined, and that's where bringing the experts in makes an impact because you do have more leverage when you can say, "Hey, I'm partnered with this person," and so now brokers will take you more seriously, and it actually makes those more desirable assets more available and on the table. So you just have to be disciplined. Don't go for the first shiny object that you see.
Yeah. And a lot of people might ask, okay, well, how do you plan for like a downturn in the market? What do you do to be conservative with your underwriting and assumptions? And what's your answer to those people?
So my answer to those people is when you're underwriting a deal and you're evaluating it, there are a handful of areas where you can add some buffer for the uncertainty. So the short answer is you don't know when there's going to be a downturn, but you want to be able to respond effectively when there is a downturn. So one example is, like I mentioned, those regional travel markets, the markets that tend to do well during a downturn. And you can actually look at the data over the last 30 years to confirm that that market does well under a downturn. The second thing I like to do is increase the cap rate when I'm doing the future projections for the refi and for the exit. So for anybody who doesn't know, a cap rate is short for a capitalization rate, and it's basically the rate of return on an asset. So in a more desirable market, naturally there's going to be a lower cap rate, which basically says that we're okay with getting a slower return because it's more desirable and there's more appreciation. Like you mentioned, true wealth is built through appreciation. So when we're underwriting our deals, we will assume that the market will be less desirable in a couple years. So we plan for refis at 3 years and for exits around 5 to 7 years. We will assume that the market will be less desirable in the future and we'll only buy the deal if it still makes sense, assuming that the market will be less desirable in the future and assuming that we are able to handle a downturn because of strong data. We need a lot of data to de-risk the
Yeah.
situation.
I hear people say it all the time. They're like, oh, like, I don't want to buy in like these high growth markets like, Southern California because there's no cash flow, right? Okay, well, then it's like, okay, well, go buy in Cincinnati, go buy in Oklahoma, right? And you're going to have more cash flow, but you're also going to have a higher cap rate. And so the first thing I think when I hear like a real estate investor say, hey, like, I want high cap rates, I want cash flow, I think, okay, they're new to the game and they don't really understand how wealth works. And so you alluded to it. What is a cap rate? It's a market's opinion of risk adjusted return. And just like you mentioned, basically in simple terms, someone is willing, a buyer in the real estate space, let's just call it from a macro perspective, a buyer in the real estate space is willing to accept lower cash flow in a high growth market because there's going to be so much more appreciation, because there's going to be so much less risk long term, right? It's a market's opinion of risk adjusted return. And so the lower the cash flow, the lower the risk of the market. The higher the cash flow, the higher the risk of the market, and also the higher the risk of the asset. So if you go into, let me just think of an extreme example. If you go into like Detroit or Cleveland right now, where there's declining population growth, there's declining job growth in both of those markets. More people are leaving than people are going in. I think another one will be Pittsburgh. And then you go and buy like a really rundown old 1950s asset in a rough area, a rough neighborhood of town. Yeah, you might find like a 15% cap rate, maybe, right? And people might think, oh my gosh, I found a 15 cap. I hear people say it all the time, I found a 15 cap. They're like bragging. I'm like, dog, like, I think the opposite.
Right.
I want to go find a good deal where I can buy below market at a discount in a really low cap rate environment, because I know for every dollar of NOI growth, I'm going to have a much bigger lever in terms of forced appreciation. And I know there's a lot more people that are going to want to buy my deal. I know the natural market appreciation in a high growth market, something that's coastal Southern California, just for example, let's say Santa Barbara, is going to grow so much faster than a place in Detroit. You might be able to buy that 15 cap in Detroit. And in 15 years, when you go sell the property, it might be worth the same as it is today. So is that going to build you true wealth? It's not. Buying assets here in areas where appreciation allows these assets to double. Organic appreciation allows these assets to double every 12 to 15 years, organically, sometimes even 10, depending on when you time the market. That's organic. Now, if you combine the organic appreciation with a good hot market that's growing, and you buy below market and you force appreciation, that's the secret sauce. That's where you really build wealth as a real estate investor. That's what I'm going after.
Yeah, those are all force multipliers
Mm-hmm.
that really jack up the equity, and then you get those big pops during the refinance and the exit down the road.
100%. And there is a way to generate cash flow in these higher growth markets. You just got to be able to buy right, and you got to be able to operate right. But if you can buy right, you can force appreciation. There's a way to get both. But the true wealth is in the appreciation. It's not in the cash flow. So when I hear people say it's all about the cash flow and I want a 15 cap and this market doesn't have enough cash flow for me, I think, okay, you don't really know how money works. You don't really understand how building wealth really works, because the people that have built big portfolios, the people that have generated, 9-figure net worths in the real estate game, they all bought for appreciation. Cash flow is just a secondary thing. This game is about debt and taxes, enforcing appreciation. That's how you build wealth.
100%. And that delayed gratification. A lot of people who are looking for those high cash flow assets, they are looking to make a quick buck right now rather than investing the extra 3 to 5 years to get those even bigger pops of cash later on.
Yes, absolutely. So, I don't know. I think that's kind of how I've always, I wouldn't say I always looked at it this way, but because when I first got in the game, I was investing in Cincinnati, I was investing in Indianapolis. But I'll give you an example. The first deal I bought, I still own today, 11 units in Cincinnati. I bought it at a discount. I forced appreciation. So I bought it for $350, which is so cheap. I think that's like what, 30 a door, 33 a door.
Whoa.
That's pretty cheap, right? And now it's worth about 8 to 820. Okay. And I still own it today. I did a cash out refi. And yeah, cash flows a little bit. It does good, but it's never going to build me true wealth, right? Now, this other deal I bought in Indy, this is one of the first deals I bought, 32 unit deal. Bought it with 2 of my old partners. We all cashed out our 401ks to buy it. Multifamily deal, C plus, maybe B minus neighborhood. Bought it for 1.1. Renovated half of the units. We exited at 3.1. The buyer paid like a 3.6 cap at our exit, and we timed it right. We got out at the right time. And so, yes, you can force appreciation in these more I don't know what you want to call it, Midwest higher cap rate markets. You can do that, and you can still win. However, if we would have done that play out in a high growth market, we would have made a lot more money than that. So my progression has changed as a real estate investor, and I only want to buy in good locations right now. That's it. I'm never going to go into an area that's not a prime location anymore.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I want assets that I'm okay holding for 10 plus years. I want to be in locations to where I can confidently go to anyone in my network, any investor in my network, anyone, and say, hey, this is an asset that I would park my grandmother's last $100, and that's it.
Yeah, that's good.
So high level real quick, for you, man, for someone listening to this right now and they're like, hey, I want to get into real estate investing, but I don't know where to start. There's 100 ways to make money in real estate investing. I can go into residential. I can go into long-term rentals. I can go into short-term rentals. I can go into commercial real estate. I can buy multifamily. I can buy a hotel. I could buy office, retail, hospitality. There's so many different ways to make money. I can go to wholesaling, flipping. If someone's listening to this right now and they're not sure where to start, what is your advice to them?
So my advice, first of all, indecision is the only wrong decision. Second of all, pick an asset class and stick with it. Reach out to 20 people who have been successful in that space and ask them out to coffee, or even better, start a podcast and ask them to be on the podcast, because a podcast, you're adding value to them because you're giving them attention, assuming that they're interested in that attention. You're giving them attention while you're getting to chat with them for an hour straight, asking them questions. And then, basically do what we just talked about, which is build rapport, understand their buy box, and align incentives such that their success is your success.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, so in everybody in commercial real estate, they're looking for 2 things. They're looking for deals and capital. So either go find deals that fit their criteria, and now you're adding value to them, to where if you find a good deal and bring it to them, now they win, right? So incentives are aligned. Or if you have access to capital, then start creating content, reaching out to friends, whatever it is. And then now you can bring capital to the table where you let them know, hey, when you find a deal, I'll bring capital to the table. And then I would just like to be involved in some way. And you can negotiate what that looks like. So effectively, your success brings them success to align incentives. And then now you're getting to work and collaborate with a high caliber person who's actually making moves in the space. Now, taking it a step further in terms of which asset class, I like boutique hotels a lot. I think boutique hotels are an untapped market. So, self storage, for example, that was really hot 5 years ago. And I think that market's pretty saturated right now. Multifamily, it's a very saturated market. Boutique hotels, I think, is next on the
It's
list
the
in
next
terms
big
of
thing,
it's the
baby.
next big thing. And it's being hit from two angles. So we have people in the multi space who are showing it more attention because it's less saturated. And then we have people who have these massive short-term rental portfolios that regulations are absolutely crushing. And so they're trying to find a way to get off the chopping block. And boutique hotels is the next natural progression. So anybody who's jumping into the boutique hotel space now is entering into a space that's less saturated, less competitive, but it's going to become more competitive over the next 5+ years.
Hmm.
And so
I think in
talking,
the next 2 to 3 years.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, every time I go to a real estate conference, all these Airbnb investors are like, "Yo, Rich, I can't wait to do my first boutique hotel." And then with the regs tightening, their short-term rental regulations tightening, it's bringing more demand back to the hotels. I believe it's going to be the next big thing in 2 to 3 years. I'm speculating. I'm always willing to be wrong, but I believe, and I have my gut feeling, I believe all these Airbnb investors around the country, they're looking for that next thing. And, Airbnb is becoming oversaturated. It's becoming regulated. And I think they're all going to jump into the hotel space once it becomes more mainstream. When I started doing the hotel stuff, no one was talking about it. No one. There's no books on it. There's no podcasts on it. Like literally zero information on how to do it, other than a couple like old YouTube videos by like mom and pop operators. And I'm just like, dude, you're seeing more and more people talk about it. I just think that in 2 to 3 years, that's going to be the next big thing. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, and that's another avenue that's gonna naturally force appreciation to
Yes.
the asset
It's
class.
gonna
So
it's gonna lower the cap rates.
yeah, 100%. So niching down, that's what I'm going for. And then additionally, reaching out to people who have done it before. Reach out to people who you might not even think reply. Like message Rich on Instagram, message me on Instagram, message other people who you see doing things in the space, and literally try to build that relationship and that rapport to get access to them and understand what they're looking for and how you can add value to them. And understand how you can add value to them by asking them good questions to understand what they're looking for and then align those incentives and let it rip.
Yeah. So I love that you said a lot of people are looking for deals and they're looking for money. So I always say if you want to build a real estate portfolio of any size, you need two things. You need deal development and you need capital development. So you need access to good deals and you need access to money. Regardless if it's your own money or someone else's money, you need to bring capital to the table. And that includes debt. So your lender is often going to be your biggest partner, but you also need to bring equity to these deals. And then you got the operations, right? So it's really deal development, capital development, asset management, and then like property management. That's really the four components. And then there's gonna be some renovation management, but you could kind of put that into the asset management. So out of these four buckets, deal development, capital development, asset management, and property management, what do you think is the highest value skill?
The highest value skill is capital raising,
Okay.
100%.
Why do you think it's the highest value skill?
It's the highest value skill because it's the most transferable. So 5 years ago, self storage was a big thing popping off. Now we're entering the phase of boutique hotels being the big thing popping off. If you're a good capital raiser, then you can just continue raising capital and infusing those asset classes with a killer return. If you are in, like, just to give the analogy of the flip side, if 5 years ago you were building relationships with brokers who were in self storage, then now, like, some brokers might have transferred over to boutique hotels, but oftentimes a broker will specialize in a specific asset class. So now you're rebuilding relationships with brokers, you're re-understanding an asset class and trying to understand the ins and outs as an operator. If you can raise capital, then you are valuable to everybody. And that goes even beyond real estate. Like, Rich, if somebody came to you and said, hey, I have a tech idea for a real estate app, you'd probably be able to raise money at the turn of a hat and then be able to benefit from that. So it's super universal. Everybody needs it. And it's a very transferable skill. So you can constantly invest in those high return.
Yeah. And so I think if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, well, how do I position myself to be the most valuable to a partnership? Think of it in that light. what is the most valuable skill out of those four that we mentioned? It's 100% capital development, the ability to attract and raise capital. I always say the ability to raise and multiply capital is the highest value skill in the world. And challenge me on that. I don't think you can be challenged on that. And so if you can raise and multiply capital and do it consistently and build a good track record, you're gonna have more opportunities than you ever even know that are even possible. More opportunities than you even thought were possible. And so position yourself to be able to attract capital. How do you do that? Build a personal brand. That's probably one of the best ways. Start a podcast. Like, you don't need to be an experienced real estate investor to start a podcast. My first podcast, the Multifamily Takeoff, that was the podcast that I had before this one. I think a lot of folks don't realize I used to have a first one before this. And when I broke up with my old partners, I said, you guys keep the podcast. I'm going to start my own. I took everything I liked and didn't like about the old podcast. I made it into this. But that old podcast, I started before I even owned any real estate. And like you said earlier in the show, I just started interviewing people that were much smarter than me, people that own real estate. And I started asking them legitimate questions that I had. And that's how I started to learn the game. That's how I started to level up. But then also that's how that's how I started to build trust with investors. And so then when I finally had time to buy a deal that was not just using my 401k and not just using my own money, when I actually went to go do my first capital raise, I had access to capital. And so I think building the personal brand is one of the number one ways you can do that. But I'll say this, dude, not everyone wants to build a personal brand. Not everyone is comfortable being on camera, and that's okay. So maybe you go and find deals. I think that's also a high value skill. If you go and find a good deal, you can partner with people that can fund it. And then I would probably say the lowest value skill out of everything, but it's something that's definitely very important, is probably like all the operations, the day to day. There's just a lot more people that can do it. And there's a lot of people that can do the operations, or at least think they can do operations, but there's not a lot of people that can like successfully raise a lot of money and multiply money.
Yeah, totally. And to take building the personal brand a step further, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are listening who know they should build a personal brand, and they're thinking of the grocery list of items of things that they have to do before they do it. To help you cut all the bullshit, the only thing you need to build a personal brand is to build in public. Don't overthink it. Literally just document, don't create. Document your journey. You don't have to be the expert. You can be documenting your journey of being the learner and meeting people and asking good questions, posting about your podcast where you're talking to people about real estate and asking them as somebody who's trying to figure it out. And
Yes.
you will attract more people than if you try to pretend to be the expert. If you're not the
Yes.
expert, don't pretend to be the expert. Be somebody who is sharing their journey, and you'll have people attracted to it. But you have to be willing to build in public. And notice I said build in public, not succeed in public. Success doesn't even matter when it comes to building a personal brand and sharing a story. What matters is building in public. And at the end of the day, it's not what you know. It's not even who you know. It's who knows you. And the only way to do that is to build in public, to get the attention, to get to that next level.
If you're not buying the kind of deals you want to be buying, if you're not making the kind of money you want to be making, it's simply because you're not shaking enough hands and not enough people know who you are. That is so, so good. What do you think is the number one key to success? What is the number one key that separates someone who maybe jumps in, gets their feet wet, doesn't ultimately end up, buying deals or whatever it is? I see so many people like have interest in learning how to get in real estate, but not many people actually follow through and commit to it. So what is the number one key to success for anyone listening to this that wants to jump into real estate?
So I'd boil it down to a combination of two characteristics. Number one is humility, and number two is the speed to take action. If you can have the humility to ask the dumb questions and to reach out to people and hop on a call, then you're more susceptible to learning at a higher rate than other people. And secondly, the speed to action, that thing that you know you need to do to get to the next level, whether it's posting content online or hopping on a podcast and starting it, just shorten that duration of time between the idea and taking action. So if you can move quickly to take action and you have the humility to ask experts what their perspective is, then you're going to succeed in whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, the most successful people I know move quick and take action often. And so as soon as they have an idea and they're like, hey, I want to go execute on this idea, they move super quickly. And that's how you level up. That's the key to growth. Those decisions that you make. And yes, there's going to be a lot of like wrong decisions. There's going to be a lot of failures along the way, but that's how we grow. I used to make 1 to 2 decisions a week with my old partnership, and they just like to go slow. They didn't have much level for risk tolerance. They didn't have much comfort level of like making mistakes. And so now we make 40, 50 decisions in a week. And yes, a lot of those decisions are not the right decisions, but we learn from them and we grow. And us making 50 decisions while someone else is taking a whole month to make one decision is the difference between growing quickly and not growing quickly. And that compounded over months, over years, is the difference between, someone making it to the college level and someone making it to the pros. It really is. It really is. One last thing before we close out the show, man. If someone is listening to this right now and they're struggling to take action, they're looking for that next thing, they feel stuck. Maybe they're working a full-time W-2 and they're just like, hey, I'm ready for that next thing. What is one piece of advice you would give them?
Don't let perfect get in the way of progress. I prioritize speed and reps above everything else. So I will fail 10 times and succeed 5 times before the next person who's overthinking it has even attempted it once, because they're trying to get it perfect the first time. There's a beautiful analogy. I think it was a professor in Japan. He was a professor in pottery, and he had a class and he split it up into 2 groups. One group, he had them, for their assignment for this semester, was to make the perfect pot. The second group, their assignment was to make as many pots as they could. So you have one group that's just ripping through pots. They made like 500 pots over the course of the semester. The original group, the first group, was creating the perfect pot. At the end of the year, they reviewed all the pots and they selected the ones that looked the best. And all of the ones that looked the best were from the group that failed 499 times, but they had that one amazing pot. So that's my encouragement to everybody listening. Don't think about it being perfect. Cut out the bullshit. Don't think through the things that make you feel safer because it's actually slowing you down. Think about the things that are moving the needle, move quickly, get the reps in, and that's how you actually get to where you're trying to go.
And the last thing I'll say is this. If you are stuck right now, you're looking for that shot, you're looking for that opportunity, the greatest transfer of wealth in American history is about to go down. 40 million baby boomers retiring in the next 7 years. 4.8 billion people are on social media. The playing field is now level. Love them or hate them, we now have a real estate investor. We have a business owner that is taking over office. The Republicans run the House. They're taking over the Senate. And so a lot of policies that are going to favor business owners, that are going to favor real estate investors, they're going to favor people looking for tax benefits, they're going to favor people moving the needle, are going to take place over these next 4 years. And so there's new energy in the air. And so if you're looking for that shot, you're looking for that opportunity, it's happening right now. And those who take action will win the game. And if you are not excited right now, I know I'm excited. I know, Gideon, you're excited. If you are not excited right now to get out of bed because of the opportunity that's in front of us, this game might not be for you. Gideon Spencer, I appreciate you coming on the show. Always a big fan of everything you're doing. We got a big holiday party tomorrow night, our black tie holiday event. We cannot wait. We got the Yin Yang Twins coming out to perform. All the big players in the real estate space are going to be there. We're giving away a 2025 Range Rover Sport. If you're listening to this show right now and you're at our holiday party, thank you for coming out. Gideon, excited to celebrate the end of the year with you. Always dropping knowledge. Where can the folks get in touch?
So I'm all over socials. I spend the most time on Instagram. You can find me at Gideon Spencer _. That's GIDEON SPENCER _. And then I also have a podcast that you've been on and was a good time, called The Hunt for Incredible, where we interview people who have done incredible things to tease out the mental models and actions that they took to actually get there so that you can apply it to your own life.
And go check out his podcast. I was a guest. And I plan to be a guest again soon. He's Gideon Spencer. I'm Rich Summers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.